Alright, what is going on, guys? It is Stocks and Noah back again with another video, and I'm making this one very quick. It's going to be a freestyle kind of video because, a lot of things just happened with this, tensions between the Iran and the United States with the war going on, and some interesting new developments came out. So, I'm going to walk you through kind of every single, domino that fell today on Monday, May 4th, 2026. In the exact order it all came out, and kind of show you why traders panicked and why oil exploded and kind of what it means for your money going forward. So without further ado, because I do value your time, let's get right into it, okay? So first things first, you need to understand the setup of what happened today, because today only makes sense in absolute context. So markets had kind of basically gotten really uncomfortable with the Iran war. Think about how strange that sentence really sounds, right? The United States has been at war with Iran since, I believe, February 28th. The supreme leader of Iran was killed in the opening strikes. The Strait of Hormuz, where about a quarter of the world's seaborne oil flows has been effectively shut down for over 2 months, right? And yet, by mid-April, the markets and the NASDAQ were closing in at all-time record highs. So, CNBC reported this on April 17th. It actually got to the point where even Jim Cramer went on television and gave, 4 reasons why the market kept shrugging off the war. Strong corporate earnings, the AI boom propping up tech, stable bond yields, and, the fact that Americans are less dependent on gas than, they used to be because, more efficient cars and the rise of EVs, coming onto the scene. Anyway, so, that kind of complacency is the single most important thing to understand going into today, all right? So, Wall Street had basically convinced itself that, the Iran war was kind of just background noise, old news, priced in already. Then this morning happened, we're seeing new developments coming out that I mentioned. Iran, they attacked the UAE. The U.S. was saying, it sank boats in the Strait of Hormuz, Project Freedom that Trump announced, the ceasefire being in peril from Axios to the NPR. All these new things are dropping. So I'm just going to go through it chronologically for you. So first things first, before we begin on what happened today, we got to talk about what happened Sunday night. There was kind of this false optimism leading into today. So this is something a lot of people miss. Going into Monday, the mood was actually very optimistic. Sunday evening, the stock futures, they opened higher. Going into Monday, Bloomberg's pre-market wrap, their night literally their pre-market wrap kind of read, and I'm quoting from the headline, U.S. futures gain, oil falls on, signs of Iran talks. And there was kind of two main reasons for this. But as you can see, oil is up about 6% on the day. So it was dropping going into today. But yeah, it definitely shot up like crazy. And this is definitely one of the reasons why the markets, became unoptimistic. But before the unoptimism, there was heavy optimism, and there was two main reasons for it. Firstly, Iran had just submitted a brand new 14-point peace proposal over the weekend. Trump said he was reviewing it. Second, on Sunday, Trump had announced Project Freedom, which was the U.S. Navy's plan, to start guiding stranded commercial ships out of the Strait of Hormuz beginning Monday morning. All right. So traders went to bed Sunday, kind of thinking, and me included, maybe this thing is finally starting to wind down. Sorry, guys, I'm a little under the weather. Very tired, too. Just, kind of freestyling this whole video. But, a lot of traders thought this was kind of, winding down. Maybe, oil comes off, the boil a little bit, kind of per se. Maybe stocks keep climbing. That was kind of the mood going into today. And kind of holding on to that because it's going to get demolished the more we talk about this. The next thing I want to talk about is the warship report, okay? So, the first crack in this whole dam kind of came out overnight from the Iranian state media. I don't have it exactly, but, I do use Twitter a lot for, in real depth news because I can't afford the Bloomberg terminal, so I use a lot of, different media sources. I recommend you guys do that too. Bricks News is very good. Polymarket's oftentimes very quick, but I'm going to be referencing to Bricks News here. So the semi-official Fars news agency, along with the ILNA, reported that Iran had actually struck a U.S. warship near an Iranian port southeast of the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, this is very important. According to the NPR's reporting, so this site right here, the Iranian outlet said the vessel was hit after, quote, violating maritime security and navigational norms, and that it was forced to turn back. Iran's Navy doubled down on the claim, saying it had blocked, quote, American Israel warships from entering the war zone. But here's the key detail that matters for understanding what happened to the markets. None of it was independently confirmed. The U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM on X, kind of pushed back on Twitter and pushed back on that idea with a flat denial. Their statement literally read, and I'm quoting directly, no U.S. Navy ships have been struck. And this is from the U.S. Center of Command. Maybe I can try and find it here quickly for you guys. The U.S. What is that? I think it's CENTCOM on Twitter. Yeah. So maybe I can try and find it here. But it literally said no U.S. ships were struck, and they absolutely denied this claim. Regardless, that should have, kind of ended it right there. But here's the thing about financial markets. They don't wait for confirmation. They react to the fog, okay? That's the biggest issue. They react to uncertainty. And by the time the New York Stock Exchange opened at 9:30, oil was already ticking higher, as we can see with Brent crude, and the optimism from Sunday night was kind of evaporating. It sent a lot of stocks down. For instance, AMD was down 5%, kind of due to this reason, but another big reason if you're an AMD shareholder, sorry to go off the rails a little bit, kind of going into earnings, there's going to be a little bit of a risk-off trading. AMD's already trading at very high levels, and HSBC recently came out with a report kind of saying, although they did raise their price target to 340, they think that they're not going to be able to beat and raise guidance for AMD. They think it's already priced in, which I completely disagree with. Anyways, we saw a lot of companies kind of go down. If we look at this, tree map here, I believe it's called, the stock map, we see a lot of it is in the red here, but it was a lot redder before. I believe the SPY, as of the time of recording, is only down 37. At its lowest, it was down like 53, 54 during midday. So yeah, that's kind of the big thing. But after the CENTCOM kind of denied this whole point, like I mentioned, the traders were kind of reacting to the fog. And then after that, when the optimism kind of went away, we kind of saw the second domino coming in, which was that one. And this one was extremely real, right? Now, the next one I want to talk about is the UAE strikes. This is what really sent the markets down, right? So, mid-Monday morning around 11 to midday, the United Arab Emirates Defense Ministry confirmed that something immediately changed, kind of immediately confirmed that, Iran had fired 4 cruise missiles directly at, UAE territory. So this Axios report really goes into detail here. I really want you guys and urge you guys to read this. And also, please follow Barack Ravid on Twitter. He's awesome. He's very good, very up to date, very speedy with it. So please give him a follow too as well. But according to CNBC, this is the first time the UAE's missile alert had been activated since the U.S.-Iran war. That is also extremely interesting. Since April 8th, that's the first time it happened. April 8th was the start of the ceasefire. So before, this was the first time since the ceasefire that their systems had been firing on all cylinders out of and they had entered a state of alert as well. That's nearly a month of relative calm broken in just a single morning because of these scares. Residents in Dubai and Sharjah and Abu Dhabi received emergency alerts on their phones telling them to seek shelter. Flights bound for Dubai and Sharjah were placed in holding patterns according to Flight Radar 24, which is a global flight tracking service. You can actually fact check that yourselves. Then it also got worse. Authorities in Fujairah, sorry if I mispronounced that, which is one of the 7 emirates that make up the UAE, confirmed that an Iranian drone had struck the Fujairah oil industry zone. A fire broke out. 3 Indian workers were injured and rushed to the hospital. Civil defense teams scrambled to bring the blaze under control. And this particular detail matters more than the people realize. According to AI monitors reporting today, Fujairah had become, and I'm quoting, a key release valve for oil stuck behind the Strait of Hormuz. It was supposed to be the workaround, the bypass, the plan B that kept some Gulf oil flowing for the rest of the world, and Iran just hit it. This is a big reason why Brent crude is up 6% today. That was the plan B to get around the chokehold that the Strait of Hormuz had. And that was the third strike of the day, kind of the third thing that rattled the energy markets and the third domino to send markets even lower. Then the next thing we have is the ADNOC tanker attack. So this one is extremely important. The ADNOC tanker attack, okay? So the UAE Foreign Ministry accused Iran of a, quote, terrorist attack on a vessel called the Baraka. The Baraka is a crude oil tanker operated by the ADNOC, which stands for the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, the ADNOC. So according to Reuters reporting today, 2 drones struck the tanker about 78 nautical miles north of Fujairah. The tanker was carrying no cargo at the time and no crew members were injured. So why does this matter so much? There's 2 reasons for it. Firstly, ADNOC is wholly owned by the Abu Dhabi government. As Discovery Alert pointed out in their analysis today, which is another article that they wrote about. This transformed the incident from a maritime security matter into a direct attack on sovereign state assets. This isn't a private commercial vessel anymore. This is government-owned property. So, secondly, the response from the region was immediate and severe. The Gulf Cooperation Council, which represents, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman, put out a statement through their Secretary General Jassim Mohammed, calling the attack, quote, piracy. The UAE foreign minister called it a, quote, flagrant violation of UN Security Council on freedom of maritime navigation, right? So when the GCC uses the word piracy to describe Iranian actions, the diplomatic gloves are off in this war, and the markets notice that immediately. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of the aftermath, or, the market meltdown that all these things, all the dominoes kind of led to here. So according to CNBC's live blog, the Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 445 points. The S&P and the NASDAQ composite both fell roughly 0.4%. In raw percentage terms, those numbers might sound modest, but they were enough to break the record high streak and have been running on for 2 weeks, all right? And, some companies got it a little worse than others. As I mentioned earlier, AMD has kind of recovered from lows. It was down to $339. Although it's still down $17 on the day, that's definitely a big jump. Amazon's looking pretty good. Microsoft was in the green a lot today, and, they just couldn't really hold their gains. Google's also down. So a lot of companies are suffering today. But oil on the other hand, it exploded, like I was mentioning. Per Yahoo Finance, Brent crude jumped more than 5% on the day, trading near 114 a barrel. And as you can see here, it's just above, right? So WTI crude, which is the U.S. benchmark, West Texas Instruments oil, climbed about 3% to above 105. And here's some context to put that into perspective. Yahoo Finance noted that Brent had already hit, 126 just last Thursday, which was a 4-year high. So oil was already elevated, and today's spike kind of pushed it back into crisis territory. Bloomberg's market wrap captured the day perfectly. Here's their summary of what they said. And I'm quoting it directly. A rally in oil drove stocks and bonds lower on concerns that a resumption of Iranian attacks could escalate Middle East tensions, keeping energy costs elevated while fueling inflation risks. And that was quoted from Bloomberg's market wrap. Treasury yields also climbed because suddenly inflation was back on the table. And I can actually pull that up for you. Maybe I can pull up the 10-year just to show you guys exactly how much they climbed. So let's look at the 10-year Treasury. The U.S. 10-year. Yep, it's up to basically 4.5 right now, which is very, very elevated. It's we haven't seen those levels since July. In March we had lows on here of about just under 4, or trading at about 4 flat. Now we're at about 4.5. So that is definitely a concern, right? So when the Treasury yields spike, the VIX also, which is Wall Street's so-called fear gauge, spikes as well. So that also shows that traders don't really know what's happening. There's a lot of volatility. That's what the VIX stands for, the volatility index, right? So that's definitely very evident of what is occurring in the Middle East right now. Travel and cruise stocks also took the heaviest beating. Per the street, Norwegian Cruise Line slid sharply after the company lowered its full-year outlook, citing, and I'm quoting their guidance, disruptions in the Middle East. So this has broad implications, not just on me and you, but on the businesses as well, which they're going to pass the prices and the price increases for them onto us, making inflation rise. So that's why the 10-year rose, which is big concerns. It raises concerns. Will there be a rate hike potentially? So there's a lot of issues going on in the market right now that, this Iran war is causing. And if it was just all over, there would be absolutely no risks to the underlying economy. Because like I've been mentioning in my newsletter, which is something you guys should probably subscribe to. It's absolutely free. You get it emailed every morning at 9 a.m. and plus intraday reports I write. The labor market's bottoming out. We're seeing stabilization through BLS and ADP reports that come out consistently. We're also seeing, private credit bottoming out as well. There's lack of concern for, the lender as well as the debt takers, right? So there's lack of concern there. It's kind of easing, bottoming out. Inflation is the only worry, but, they kind of mentioned in the recent Fed meeting that's a little transitory without mentioning it, right? Citing primarily it coming from the Iran war. So we need this to kind of blow over. Now, the next part I want to talk about is also the mines, also in as well as the blockade here. I believe it was from the Wall Street Journal, but yeah, also Yahoo Finance kind of reported that, U.S. military leadership issued a fresh warning to commercial vessel owners that Iran has placed sea mines through the Strait of Hormuz once again, actual mines. Secondly, Iran's military formally declared a brand new quote, maritime control zone in the Strait of Hormuz. Per Iran's Tasnim news agency, excuse me, Iran is now warning all commercial vessels not to transit the strait without explicit coordination with Iran forces. And I believe BRICS News also covered this as well. So for instance, U.S. military says they encourage traffic flow through the Strait of Hormuz despite attempted attacks by Iran. Some of those are going to be, missile attacks and also mines being laid down. And not to mention, I've even talked about, Israel and Hezbollah, Lebanon having a very shaky ceasefire agreement currently going on. So that's another issue to this Iran war as well. It just kind of keeps piling up. Thirdly, Project Freedom was supposed to launch today. According to CBS News, U.S. Central Command on Twitter confirmed that 2 U.S. flagged commercial vessels did successfully transit the strait under the new initiative. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on Fox News in the morning and claimed that the United States has now, quote, absolute control over the waterway. But there is a twist that made traders absolutely lose confidence. AI Monitor, which is another news source, reported that the ship monitoring service tankertrackers.com observed at least one Iranian liquefied petroleum gas tanker slipping through the U.S. naval blockade at the exact time Bessent was on TV claiming absolute control. So let's kind of just tally up actually what happened in that 30-mile wide stretch of water right now, which is the Strait of Hormuz. Sea mines, courtesy of Iran, crew missiles and drones, courtesy of Iran, a U.S. Navy escort, mission called Project Freedom, courtesy of Trump, a competing Iranian maritime control zone, tankers slipping through both blockades, and commercial ship insurers absolutely refusing to underwrite anything in the area. No wonder traders ran for exits today, and no wonder we saw about $200 billion get wiped from the stock market in under 20 minutes right when the news dropped. So that was absolutely insane to see. But here's the takeaway, guys, because I do value your time, and this is the part that actually matters for you and your wallet. So, Wall Street had basically priced the Iran war as old news. They today totally flipped the script in a single trading session, all right? We saw, the oil shoot up like crazy, which is bad for the consumer, bad for, expendable income, bad for the stock market. We saw the 10-year shoot up, exact same analysis as well, right? So, as the Bloomberg wrap put it, a single morning was enough to send oil up 5%, equities down, and bond yields climbing, as well as the VIX spiking, right? So that's all that it can literally shift on a dime, and we noticed that today. But, the deeper concern is what, AI Monitor flagged in the back end of the reporting today. They wrote, and I'm quoting, insurers and vessel operators are unlikely to quickly resume transits through the conflict-ridden area. That's quiet, but an enormous statement in itself. What it means is that even if the shooting stops tomorrow, oil prices could stay elevated for weeks or even months because no one wants to risk sending ships through. Insurance premiums spike, freight rates spike, and oil stays expensive. And for everyday Americans and, Canadians, if you're like me, and honestly, anywhere around the world, that means gas prices, which are already up nearly 50% since the war started in February, according to CBS News, are not coming down anytime soon. And for investors, it's even worse. It means the Iran war just stopped being background noise and started being the main event again. And we saw what happened when it was the main event. Markets, the S&P was down 10%. Equities some of these companies were down 50%. We saw AMD went down to 198 from being steadily at 270 a share. So, it was a humongous drop for some companies. And that's kind of everything that happened today on May 4th, 2026. And that's every domino in order with the full context. And guys, if this video was helpful in any way, shape, or form, and it helped make sense of the chaos to a degree, please hit that subscribe button. We're going for 20 subscribers. I'll keep tracking the story as it develops because trust me, after a day like today, it's going to develop much quicker. I'll have another update if anything major breaks out overnight. Drop your questions in the comments below, guys. What do you guys want to hear me cover next? Are any of you guys worried about gas prices? Or you think it's going to last longer? How long do you think it'll last? Maybe into July. Some people were saying August on Kalshi. What are your concerns about the broader market, about escalation into maybe a full regional war? Let me know down below, and I'll cover the most upvoted topic in the next video. All right, guys? If you got any value out of this, share it to one person who's been confused about what's going on. That's the best way to support my channel, Stocks with Noah. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Stay in the green, stay safe, be smart, and God bless. See you guys in the next one.